Okay, so let's talk about all things Newcastle. Exciting season coming up for the Magpies with Champions League football returning to St James's Park. And as we know, Newcastle have signed a £25 million front of shirt deal with a Saudi Arabian company called Sailor, who specialise in event organising in Saudi Arabia. It has been reported that they'll be helping out Newcastle with the development of the new fan zone at Strawberry Place. How important do you think that development could be for Newcastle fans in terms of improving the matchday experience, but also increasing their matchday revenue?
I think in terms of the matchday experience, as Newcastle United are looking to broaden their fan base, and clearly they've got a waiting list at present, so it is going to be difficult for fans to get to see the club. That can only help if it improves the general bonhomie pre-match. Then that's going to transfer to what we're seeing in terms of the atmosphere. As far as the impact on the bottom line are concerned, it's far more important for Newcastle to be regularly qualifying for European competition and the money that brings. But in a new environment, in terms of the UEFA financial and sustainability rules, where the amount of money you can spend on wages and agents' fees and so on is determined by total revenues, then any positive impact in terms of income generation has to be investigated, costed, and potentially accelerated, because as far as the Premier League and Europe is concerned, you're always running to stay still, with 7 clubs, but realistically chasing 4 Champions League places from now on.
Yeah, and it does seem a lot of clubs are chasing revenue, and another way Newcastle could look to do that is by expanding St James's Park. It's been reported that they could expand the East Stand to increase the total capacity to around 62,000. That would jump them up to around the third highest capacity in the Premier League. How significant would that be for Newcastle to have a stadium of that caliber and European football?
I think both elements are absolutely critical, and the reason for that is that if you take a look at total matchday revenue, ultimately it's number of matches times capacity of stadium times average spend per customer or fan on tickets. Newcastle had £28 million from matchday revenue in 21-22. Now, by the other 14 standards, that's excellent. By the standards of the Big Six, it's half the revenue of Manchester City. It's around about quarter that of Manchester United. So clearly there's a lot of catching up to do. And if Newcastle are starting a season on 70 or 80 million pounds less than Manchester United and Spurs and Arsenal, and they're very much the leaders, but Liverpool are catching them up with their expansion, then 80 million pounds of revenue equates to 56 million pounds in terms of wages. And Newcastle want to be competitive with these bigger clubs. So therefore, it's critical that the expansion takes place, not only to increase the ability to sell regular seats, but Newcastle will be focusing very much on the prawn sandwich brigade, on the hospitality sector, because you talk to people at clubs such as Bayern Munich, and they say that the 6,000 hospitality tickets generate as much, if not more money than the 60,000 from the regular fans. So I think we will see a change in the makeup of the demographics of the people attending. There'll still be the hardcore Newcastle fans, but expect to see the club targeting tourist fans, targeting hospitality sectors and so on with this expansion.
Yeah, definitely. We've also seen Newcastle busy in the transfer window. They've signed Sandro Tonali. Looks like a good bit of business for the club. It's reported that he will be on a wages of around £140,000. Do you expect Newcastle to have a problem with structuring wages moving forward, given obviously everyone knows about the new wealth that's come into the club? How important do you think it could be for the owners and Eddie Howe to implement a wage structure to kind of work with FFP?
Well, I think you've said exactly the right things there, in the sense that left to their own devices, the owners would be probably willing to pay limitless amounts in terms of wages, but they are constrained both domestically and on the European front by the cost control measures in the form of profitability and sustainability within the Premier League and the new FSR arrangements as far as UEFA are concerned. And also, given the nature of the new owners, expect to see Newcastle United come under an awful lot of scrutiny from the regulatory bodies and of course fans and journalists. Therefore, a wage structure which is attractive and appealing, as well as within the rules, is a tight balancing act. But we've seen other clubs have wage limits which have been acceptable to players. So if we take a look at the likes of Spurs and Arsenal, they're, based on my figures, they're probably paying on average between £95,000 to £100,000 a week. Newcastle was around about 79, 80, but that was without European football. So I think the additional revenues that are being brought in through Champions League qualification will give Newcastle some leeway. I think the challenge will be is that you've got one player coming in on £140,000 a week. That then becomes the benchmark for every major signing going forwards, and I think that would be a challenge. The likes of Manchester United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Manchester City, they're paying in the 150 to 180,000 bracket, but they have had Champions League experience for a number of years. Chelsea and some of the other clubs have got the benefit of being London, where you can charge premium prices and so on, and I think that's going to be a big challenge for Newcastle.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes will be among the highest earners at St James's Park. It was reported before the transfer window that Eddie Howe would only have a transfer budget of around £75 million. Some people linked it to FFP limitations at Newcastle. But having spent already around £50 million on Tonali, do you think that could have been a tactic employed by the club to almost stop clubs from overcharging them in the transfer window? As we've talked about before, they know about the wealth at the club.
Yes, I think for clubs such as Newcastle and Manchester United, that they're fully aware that there is a perceived tax when they are the buyers, especially in the current market. So therefore, by leaking stories to friendly parties to be put out, it's there to dampen down expectations. First of all, in terms of fans. Secondly, in terms of agents and their players. And thirdly, in terms of selling clubs. And if as a result of this you can make savings, then that goes back into the pot. I'd take with a pinch of salt there being a budget of X or Y, because when it comes to player trading, the key word there is trading, and you've got to look at the people who are leaving the club as well as those coming in. £75 million on an average of a 5-year contract works out as an amortization fee of just £15 million. Yes, you've got wages on top of that, but they're going to be, the figures we said, probably another 10. Well, that's going to be more than covered by Newcastle qualifying for the Champions League, and that's before you take into account the new front of shirt and sleeve sponsor deals coming in. So be cautious, and social media is a viper's nest of rumor, counter rumor, and conspiracy theory in terms of the numbers which are being quoted. Everybody's fishing for likes, and don't always believe what you read.
Yeah, definitely. And as you say, player sales could also inflate figures further, and spending's kind of going to be fluctuating, definitely. It's also been reported that Newcastle are in talks to host an international fixture with Saudi Arabia in September, I believe. Do you think that's significant in terms of helping consolidate their relationship with the nation and their owners?
That relationship clearly is there. I think it could be beneficial if it's taking place in Saudi Arabia. You get some warm weather training, you get the chance to meet representatives from existing and potential sponsors in the location. There will be a curiosity value with regards to Newcastle, whether they become the football team of Saudi Arabia, given that many Saudi Arabian fans are already supporting the likes of the Manchester clubs, Chelsea, Liverpool, and so on. Waits to be seen, but I think it's certainly an opportunity for Newcastle to cement that relationship, and it's difficult to see a downside. Clearly, the critics will also be pointing out issues with regards to the social and cultural differences between the West and parts of Saudi Arabia as well, but that goes with the territory.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia is definitely a market I think they're looking to target, isn't it? And also, the US market as well. Newcastle heading to America to take part in the Premier League Summer Series as part of their pre-season tour. Do you think it's important that Newcastle could consolidate their reputation and build their reputation up in America?
I think it's essential for all of the Premier League clubs to dip their toe into the American market. There has been a huge amount of interest from an investment point of view. The success of the likes of Welcome to Wrexham and Ted Lasso have spiked enthusiasm for football, although it's never going to compete with the traditional American sports. But there's still a pie there of football interest, and what you've got to try to do if you're a club like Newcastle is to increase your slice of that particular pie, and then monetize that through merchandise, through sponsorship and commercial arrangements. And again, that goes into the overall pot, which Eddie Howe can subsequently use as part of his armory of recruiting and retaining talent.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this summer series plays out in America, I think, because as you say, it's quite well timed with things going on. Also reports that Ruben Neves, having signed for a PIF-backed Saudi Arabian club, could be loaned out to Newcastle United. Obviously, that rumour has caused concern among a number of football fans. Do you think the Premier League would be forced to step in if such a deal was completed between the two clubs?
Well, if you take a look at the Premier League handbook, and it's a thick, weighty, and not particularly exciting tome, but there is a section which specifically deals with football transfers and loans in terms of fair market value transactions. So I think the Premier League would be encouraged by other clubs and certainly by the media to investigate if such an arrangement did take place, because it would be skating on thin ice as far as many people are concerned in terms of the integrity and the transparency of individual transfer transactions. So if it does take place, and at present it's an unsolicited rumour, again, there's an awful lot that's swirling around in terms of the footballers. You would expect it to draw a lot of attention, and not just from media and social media. I think the Premier League would be minded to investigate further.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, that wraps it up, I think. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Anytime.
Much appreciated.